Okay, welcome to this time-lapse video. In this video I'm going to go over this run cycle I made last night, and I set myself a timer of 60 minutes and trying to make a nice run cycle and get as far as I can. So I'm pretty happy with the final result, which we'll see later, and I'm using a rig from Carl Figgins. The link will be down below. It's a pretty good rig. It's pretty cartoony, the simple controls and the sort of design of it is quite nice, so I thought I'd use one of the pistols and they'd be kind of firing or at least aiming down the sights and then running after someone is chasing. Nothing too stylized, but just pretty asymmetrical, I guess you could say. So yeah, the first pose of course is, well for me at least, I'm doing a airborne pose, so both feet off of the ground. This is kind of, I think, it's the biggest sort of stretch pose, I guess you could say. Now of course, because the gun's aiming forwards, then that means that the whole chest and the upper body will be rotating with the gun and with the shoulder. And even for the opposite pose, which I'll do later on, it's going to keep this kind of shape pretty consistently. Of course, the gun is kind of leading the action, kind of. So even though in a normal run cycle the chest will rotate backwards, on the opposite contact pose I have to make sure I don't do it too much just to maintain that sort of strength in the pose. So I'm really pushing this stretch. I'm animating everything here, even the backpack, when I get a little bit of like shift. I'm not too worried about the extremes yet. I'm going to do this pose, and then in a second I'll do the opposite stretch pose on frame 7 or frame 8, and then I will go in and work out where the extremes are going to be. I haven't done a run cycle in quite a long time actually, so this is going to be, this was, I guess, my memory was slightly betraying me, I guess you could say, or what I had to do correctly. I did also use some images and references, as in a timing reference I should say, just to make sure I got the timing correct. But as you can see here, I'm doing 0 is the first pose, then 7 or 8 is the opposite pose of that same pose, but the stretch pose. And then of course I think frame 14 is my ending frame, so I do adjust this slightly later on. Because frame 0, frame 7 and then frame 14 is what I finally land on for the final timing for the main sort of stretch and stretch. I also animated this with the IK chest and then used the IK hip at the bottom. I think for this type of cycle, IK is easier and better. There's no point doing 3 or 4 FK controllers for what is fairly minimal movement. But here you can see the timing. I'm thinking how fast the guy's going to run. He's not going at a full sprint, so it's not going to be like really like Usain Bolt. It's not quite that fast, but I do want him to go pretty quickly. So just working out what the timing is going to be. So then I'm going to go and find this sort of breakdown. Since I've done so many cycles now, mostly walking cycles to be fair, but also any type of cycle, I don't do it as much as pose to pose as I used to, because I kind of know where the extremes are, right? So for example, I know that I need to have the hips shifting one way on X frame, or they need to go up on this frame, so I don't need to worry about the down pose, up pose, contact pose as much anymore. I just work on individual controllers as I go through. But I do want to work on the feet first, I think. I want to make sure the timing of the feet and when they plant and hit the ground is correct, and then I can adjust the hips and even the chest according to those controllers. I've used Animate there just to make a selection set, by the way. If you don't have Animate, there's no worries. You don't need to Animate for these things. It's just so I can do things slightly more quickly. This rig has a really cool feature though, that the controllers are constrained to individual parts of the body by like an attribute. So I can just switch that on and off, a bit like IK world space or local space for like the hands, for example. So I just put the gun, I said I wanted it to go to the hand, and that's all I have to do. Though you'll see near the end of this video, my brain just melts and I completely forget how to animate this IK hand. So for now it's out there in front just doing nothing, but later on you'll see how I completely butcher that section for a good 10 minutes I think. So also when I do these shots, I'm making sure that the graph editor is open now, because I've got the main sort of motion down, so now I'm starting to look at like the hips. So let's go into the curve. Yes, I'm still setting this on all keys. I guess you could call this my blockings are finished. So now I'm going into the hips and working out where the extremes are. So the side-to-side movement is going to be a bit more minimal on a run cycle, because of course he's kind of going through the air so fast, he's never going to be needing to balance on one leg as much as a walk cycle perhaps. But even so, I want to get the extreme correct. So based on what I'm looking at, I feel like the extreme should be on about frame 5 for this shot. It's when the leg is fully on the ground and one leg is kind of coming through. I guess it's the passing pose, maybe you could call it. Yeah, the passing pose. And of course, the down pose is quite subtle here, but I also want to make sure I do have a down pose, which is I guess frame 4 or frame 3. I do think I adjust these slightly as I go forward. But even though, yeah, every single animation you do has to have the same kind of poses. So even if it's a run cycle, you need the down pose, you need the up pose. Animation is all about extremes, right? So I'm thinking of the extremes here. Now, the one thing I don't like about this rig is the controllers for the feet. They do have everything I need, but it's just kind of all over the place and a little bit confusing. But it is still there. It doesn't, like, it's not lacking in anything. It's just hard to find, I guess. So I'm looking to find the right controller for the toe roll and the foot roll, and I'm really trying to think to make sure that I get this correct. So here I'm adjusting the hips down a lot because I want to make sure that the foot contacts with the straight leg, but I don't want it to completely break. And I realize maybe I should actually change the position of this pose. So I make it one frame later, so the contact's on frame 3. Because I think it makes more sense for this shot. Yeah, so now I'm working on how to get this, I guess the down pose is frame 3 now. So this is the contact pose, still contact pose. So I'm trying to work out how to get this roll. This is what I said about the rig being good, but everything's a bit confusing for the feet. You see, now I'm realizing that actually now I've got the wrong attribute. I've got to find the right one. And I can't quite find what I need, because all individual axis. But I found the heel, and that's what I want. And you still want a straight leg for this pose. It's like a contact pose, of course. So this is where the foot is about to take all the weight, and the foot's out stretching to meet the ground. And I'm now using motion trails. You don't have to use them if you're pretty confident with Maya, and I don't use them for everything. But for cycles and for knees, I like using them quite early, just because I want to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. Again, Maya does have the inbuilt run cycle, sorry, the inbuilt motion trails, which is just as good. They're slightly slower with like memory. They take up more memory. Yep, and I think I'm getting this. I think that first foot okay. And I thought about copying the animation to the other foot, but I realised actually I don't want to do that because I want to have a bit more, even though it's such a short cycle, I want to try and have a little bit of variation between the 2 feet. So I thought I'd do this manually for the other foot. And then I'm doing the same thing again, really. I'm going in, finding these contact poses, making sure the rotations are zeroed out. I like to make sure my rotations are 0 on the contact and also on anything on the ground. It's a good idea to make sure if you're animating something, you don't use 2 controls to animate one thing. So, for example, there's a controller on the feet, which is like a roll, a toe roll, which makes the ankle sort of rotate back and forth. And I can also rotate the foot using just the basic rotation controls, but they do the same thing. So I don't want to do both of those things at the same time. So when I'm in the air, I will use the rotation controls. And when I'm on the ground, I will try and use the toe roll and the heel roll controls. And just adding in a ground plane so I know where the contact is. Still want to get the spacing correct. I think I do adjust this near the end of the video, so this is not my final spacing for the feet, but you want to get that. And you'll find them with run cycles and also walk cycles. It's not really the feet that are the problem, it's the knees. The knees are such a pain to deal with. Knee pops and everything. And I will say one thing about Animate which I love. I keep pressing this button in the middle of the screen, the orange curves. It's basically an infinity curve button, which basically means that I don't have to manually go in and adjust the final tangents of each key. You'll see in Maya by default, even there on that frame there, for example, is easing out into the final key, which makes no sense because a run cycle should be not linear, but it should be consistent. It should be keeping the same speed going through those contacts or going through the final poses. So if I have to do it manually, changing every single key to be kind of a bit smoother, it would take a good 5-10 minutes. So that button, just one click and it does it for me. Animate has that function, as other scripts have the same function. So I would look into maybe finding one. I think the bottom half of the body is getting pretty close to being done. These curves are still a bit rough, so I'm going in and checking them now. Yeah, so this is, I think, the gun, right? Yeah, so I think the gun does change at the end. The gun should be kind of countering what the leg or the hips are doing, because the pivot point is by the grip of the gun, which means that I want the barrel and the tip of the gun to be opposite to what the hip's doing, and also dragging behind though, of course. I think I did change this a little bit later on though, because of course it does intersect a lot. But the general rule is still the same. It should be dragging behind, but also they should be offset and delaying, like any other part of the body, which is, you know, is behind. Like if it's fingers, or if it's a wrist, or if it's a tail, or it's hair, the same principles apply. It's offset, overlap. The difference is here, of course, it's mechanical, it's metal, so there's no bend or stretch. So I'm just trying to find controllers. Normally I want to put a motion trail onto the knees, but for some reason this controller doesn't want to do that for me. It's slightly annoying. So I'm looking for any other controller I can use to try and make a motion trail. You can use geometry, which I do end up doing, but it's slightly slower. And you'll see here, this is not a bug, it's actually just part of how the rig's set up. So this uses a auto rigger, or at least it's a script, which means that the mirror table keeps thinking that both legs are the same part of the same joint system, which is fine. It's not the end of the world. I can still use it to animate at least one of the knees, and the other one I just do by eye later on and copy the same feeling. It's a bit annoying, but not the end of the world. So you see how it's always snapping to the left leg. I can never get a trail on the right leg, or the screen right leg. It's always snapping to the left leg. But it's fine. I have to do it by eye. And it's not too big a deal. I'm still panicking. I think, please give me a motion trail. I'm looking at every single controller, but then I use the feet, and the feet give me a good approximation of where they are. But I'm looking at the knee here, right? So the knee, I think this is still too snappy. I think I did change this. But yeah, as the knee comes down, you've got to make sure it doesn't pop and hit the ground too hard. You want to have that feeling of weight, but only if it doesn't feel like it's popping down to place. There should still be some cushion between the contact pose and the pose 2 frames before, if that makes sense. So you basically just do case by case, go frame by frame, and just check to make sure the spacing is correct. So I'm adding some keys here to make that sort of knee a bit nicer. I really want to get that stretch of the push off as well. But you can see how empty my curves are in a way. Like I'm not doing any massive like pose to pose type animation here. It's just literally going in, where is this extreme? I'm going in and keying it. So I'm doing a cycle here, just to make sure that it does work. So I think this is almost done for the lower body, and then the feet. Yeah, I'm checking from the front. I think it's so fast, don't need to worry too much. Now what I'm looking at here is basically looking at the torso, the upper body and the chest, but I'm using the rotation curves of the hips because they're going to counter rotate. So I want the chest to be kind of central, so as the hips come across to one side, they want to counter rotate backwards, so the chest kind of stays central-ish to the main movement. Especially when he's holding a gun, you can imagine it wants to be quite stable. So I'm actually going to use the front view just to really check this, so I can really see exactly what's happening in the chest. Because I want basically the gun and the head to be in one line. He's focused, looking forward, and the body rotates around that point in a way. Sadly, there's Gimbal Lock here, I forgot to set up correctly. I tried using this script to change it, but I realised later on that it's keyed. The rig also has a attribute to change the rotation order, and that's already keyed, so it's it can't overwrite that, which is why it's not working. But I didn't know this at the time. But you should always check Gimbal Lock. I know it's something animators hate. I mean, I hate it every day. I always forget to think ahead and work out what access I need. But if you do have an issue, there are scripts out there that can help you. Animate has one built in. That script I just used is also free. I'll link some things down below if it's useful for people. I'm just trying to clean up these curves. Most of the time you need just 3 keys, 2 extremes and the midpoint. Yeah, and I'm still really struggling with this IK hand for the gun. I'm looking at the gun is something that I did not think would be this difficult, and to be fair, it's not. It's just that I was having a brain fart and I really could not think straight. When I did this, it was about nearly midnight, and my daughter had just fallen asleep, so I was being quite quick just to get this done, but I was quite tired. So I changed the hand here to FK, just because I realised it's easier just to have the extremes, and I get those like arcs kind of for free in a way, because I just have those 2 extremes and the Maya will in between for me. Again, the same issue, there is already a key set for the rotation order, so I can't change it with that script. So the way to do the arms is a really good trick. Each joint should be offset by about 1 or 2 frames. So for example, the extreme for the upper arm or the shoulder should be the same as your contact pose or your sort of stretch pose, where the chest is fully rotated one way and the shoulder and the upper arm are rotated back towards the other side of the body. And then for the elbow, you only really want to rotate it in one axis, and that should happen 2 frames later than the shoulder. So if your extreme for the shoulder is on frame 1, then your extreme for the elbow could be on frame 2 or frame 3, depending on how fast or slow your cycle is. And then the same thing again for the wrist. If let's say your elbow extreme is on frame 3, then the wrist could be on frame 5, so 2 frames later again. And add very little finger animation here as well. I don't want to do too much because I am still looking at the clock, and I want to get this done before my daughter wakes up. So just having a very subtle sort of closed position and then open position at the front. If I had some more time, or if I was a bit more awake, I would probably do a little bit more work to the fingers. But this is a simple sort of 2 poses, and let Maya sort of animate between them. And delete all the keys in between, just so I have that sort of the in-between is done for me basically. Maya is a great tool if you give it the right information. So it looks okay. You see the overlap in the hand. If you slow it down to 0.5 speed, or you wait till the end of the video where you see the result, you'll see that the hands do look quite nice. So now I'm fixing the gun again. It kind of broke. We're still doing the same thing, having the overlap. As the hips come down, the gun goes up, and as the hips go up, the gun goes down. And there's also a controller for the helmet, so I thought I'd add a little bit of animation just to the helmet and also the visor as well. So just a very small, subtle back and forth. So the same as basically anything else, it's going to be delayed by the head. So as the head goes down, the visor goes back, and vice versa. Thought I had a very subtle jaw animation, just open and close. So I'm not sure if I keep this or not. I might have deleted it. I didn't want to get too focused on the face for this shot. It was just body mechanics. Yeah, I remember thinking it looked weird, so I left that alone. So now I start doing this hand. So what I thought about doing is, as it wasn't really working, I thought, okay, let's animate the gun, and I'll constrain the hand to the gun, which is normally how I do things if it's a heavy object. this gun was kind of in the middle. Like, it's not heavy, it's not light. And also because the body's moving so much, I want the gun to inherit the motion from the body, if that makes sense. If the gun is animated in world space by itself, it's going to feel really, really disconnected to the body. But I thought I'll try it this way and see how it works. And I'm pretty sure I do change it back after about 2 or 3 minutes. But the main thing I'm going for is just a kind of figure of 8, I guess, up and down, with the tip of the gun kind of dragging behind the head. But only subtly, because of course I want to make sure that the gun is still focusing forward and not like flailing all over the place. I'm still kind of working out how this rig works, so that's why it's a bit strange. The tool I'm using, by the way, on Animbot there, is if I select that tool and I animate something, it affects the whole of the animation by the same value. So if I move the controller up by 10, every single frame is moved up by 10. Which is quite useful for like reposing something. So I'm just trying to get the animation to work with the body. I think it looks okay at this point, and I think okay, this could work. But then I just tried to add some more like subtle movement like this, and it starts to get really strange. And this is where the brain farts start to happen. I think if I left it as it was about 30 seconds ago, it could have been fine. But then I kept trying to change it and make it better, and then it got worse, and it got worse, and it got worse. So the next sort of 5 minutes of this video is really just me doing the gun. So hopefully it's not too boring, this section. But what I should have done, as you'll see I think in a bit later, is, well, the first thing I do is I should have actually used a locator in between the two controllers. So have a locator for the gun, which I parent to the gun. And then I also use a simple edit sort of group parent with the locator parented as a child to the hand, which means if I animate the hand, I can also animate the locator, which will be separate in the chain of parents, so it can be animated independently, but it will also keep following the hand. If that sounds confusing, I have a video which I'll link in the description of how I did that, which explains exactly what I mean by this. But what that means is I have control. But for this, I didn't do that, so I don't have the same level of control I wanted, and that was a mistake. And but there was one reason why I didn't use a locator though, which was because I wanted this to be a cycle which I then export to Studio Library, which is the plugin, and they don't like constraints. So I was gonna basically have to bake it down. So I wanted to skip a step and kind of cheat, which of course backfired because it took longer anyway. So the moral of the story is don't cheat, just do it properly. It's making a gun pose. I wanted to, and actually you'll see in the final animation, I did this for 1 hour and I didn't quite get to add in a gunshot. But what I did do the next morning, there's no more animation done to the body. So the animation you see in this time lapse is the animation. But I did add a quick gunshot with a bullet and also a, what's the word? A ricochet? No. I can't speak English anymore. I've lived overseas too long. But the body reacts to the gunshot. And I added that the morning after, just quickly for 5 minutes. But then there's no extra animation done, which you can't see in this video, so don't worry. But yeah, this is when I realized that again I need to put this back. So this is when I put the animation back onto the hand, and this is still having a nightmare here. I'm thinking, oh, I need to go to sleep, it's too tired. I know. It's like, I think it's nearly like 1 AM at this point. My daughter wakes up at like 6 AM, so this is, yeah, pushing it for me. But yeah, and then I put it back onto the body, and I do try to fix it. And I think at this point I realize, okay, I think the IK hand needs to be what's controlling the body. So I delete all the animation and I constrain it back to the wrist, and this time the wrist is controlling the body. So I'm just trying to get that figure of 8 motion trail, so with the tip of the gun. So watching this now, the day after, It does look very, very bad as an animation workflow. But hopefully this can show you why sometimes even I, or even any animator, just get stuck on the simplest of things sometimes. But yeah, this is that figure of 8 I'm going for, you can kind of see. I guess it's more like just a circle at this point from this angle. From the front it will look like a figure of 8. From the orthographic front view, it will be like a figure 8 from side to side and up and down. That's what I'm going for at least. So I try offsetting it, see if that helps. Doesn't help. So I put it back to what it is. But this is almost what I wanted, so I'm pretty happy with how this is coming along now. I've figured out the workflow. I think it could do with a little bit more side to side, a very subtle amount. And I think I realised that, but I also think if I change it more, I might break again. So I don't want to risk it when I've only got, in this challenge I said I had it 1 hour. I think at this point I've got like 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes left till the hour's up. So you can see the gun is still a little bit static in the air, but for what I was going to do, it's fine. So I decided to leave it at this. I'm just doing a very quick cleanup to other parts of the body now, some of the shoulders as well, and I think I did check the backpack one more time. But yeah, at this point the body's all done, so I can call that a day. And I just quickly want to check the motion trail on the arc of the elbow, because that's also quite important. Just like the knees have lots of pops, the elbows have lots of pops too. And I think it looks okay. At least my tired brain says this looks okay. So I thought I would leave it at that. Doing the final checks for the other parts of the body. Yeah, that's the rotation I wanted. I wanted a little bit of side to side. Obviously it's going to follow the body. And I think the translations as well, I wanted to make it a bit bigger. So I'm going to scale up the whole thing by 1.2. Keep going, until it gets really, really big, and then I can scale it back down again. So yeah, I'm going to apply it 5 times, it gets bigger and bigger. And I find a value that looks okay, but not too fast, and I leave it at that. And yeah. So like I said, I do spend about 5 minutes more on this assignment the next day, the morning after. And you'll see what that looks like in a second. But the animation itself, though, for the body and the head and the torso and everything, that's all the same. And there's nothing different about that. So this is me just baking it down now, just to make sure I save the animation for Studio Library, and I want to make sure nothing is lost. So I'm baking the animation back onto the hand, back onto the gun, so it's all one mesh with no locators, no constraints, just all a very simple animation. And final cleanup, just deleting anything which is unneeded, checking all the tangents are correct as well. There's the backpack animation a tiny bit, just to make sure it has some overlap as well. So as the chest rotates around, it's going to also kind of go, it's dragging behind the chest, I guess, as in the rotations of the chest. Just very subtle, you can't really see it, but you can feel it, I guess. And so yeah, I was pretty happy with this run. I mean, again, I haven't done runs in a while, so I mean, I've done runs in, I guess, a real setting, like the guy runs across the room to get something, but I haven't done a run cycle in a while. So it was nice to just quickly do this. And I'm going to try and do cycles every day for at least a week or two, just to get back into it. I have a dragon cycle planned for tomorrow, which I'll upload hopefully tomorrow. At least upload it soon. Maybe not tomorrow, but I'll do it tomorrow and upload it during the week. And if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe. It's really, really helpful because I'm trying to grow, and I'm trying to make tutorials and like workflow videos at least once a week, if not more. So please do like and subscribe. Comment down below if there's anything else you want me to make, any cycle you want to see, any animation style you want to do. I'm pretty confident that I can do most things, so if you have any questions, then do please ask. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I do a few bits more cleanup, and then this is the final example. So yeah, I did add some gunshots and stuff. All I did was go to Maya, add in a very small cylinder, give it an emission shader, and then in Nuke I gave it a blur and a glow effect. And a very small recoil, that's the word, recoil onto the wrist, and that was it. Yes, thanks for watching again, and please do like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.